That's the way I see heavy doses of psilocybin speaking to me, not really about things here on this planet.
Well, I agree with you. That's my experience. And in trying to account for it, you have to look at fungi. Fungi are primary decomposers. That means they can only live on decaying life. That suggests to me that they are late evolving, or at least not early evolving. Mushrooms are very soft-bodied, and so are all fungi. There is no record, no fossil record of a mushroom older than 40 million years. Well, that's a tiny fraction of the time life has been on the Earth. Now, when I asked a paleontologist about this, he said, well, they're soft-bodied and they don't fossilize easily. But hey, we have flatworms from the gunflint chert of South Africa that are 4.3 billion years old. If they left a trace in the fossil record, you'd think there would be more of a trace of mushrooms. If you decondition your presuppositions and just look at the mushroom, it looks to me, number one, as though it is capable of surviving an extraterrestrial environment. In other words, if you have mushroom spores and you want to store them for long-term longevity, you seek an environment as much like outer space as you can find. You store them in liquid nitrogen at minus 200 degrees, and they will last virtually forever. If you look at the color of Stropharia cubensis spores, that's in the brown-gilled mushroom family, the spores are deep purple, almost black. That's the color you would paint a spacecraft if you wanted to absorb long wave radiation. If you look at the spore, what is it? It's a packet of crystallized DNA. A single mature Stropharia cubensis mushroom, when it's sporulating, will shed up to 3 million spores a minute for up to 2 weeks. 3 million spores a minute for 2 weeks. And these things are microscopic, so small that the perturbations and agitation of air molecules, which are called Brownian motion, can actually percolate these things into the outer atmosphere, where then energetic cosmic events can actually detach them from the terrestrial medium, and they slowly, like planetary dandruff or something, drift off into space. Well, I always, it seems so obvious to me, maybe it's because I live in Hawaii, but the most predictable major revolution in biology that you can imagine is, of course, within a few years it will be realized that the Earth is an island. That's all. That the biota that is present here, much of it probably drifted in cosmic debris. When stars go supernova, planets are destroyed. It's a cliche of cosmic consciousness to say, the atoms in your body were once in the hearts of distant stars. Well, if that's true, then some of the atoms in your body were once in a part of distant planets. And some vanishingly small fraction may have been part of the biota of extraterrestrial ecosystems. The other thing about the mushroom that's very suggestive to me is it appears to be, or there is a place, a perspective from which you can look at it, that it appears to be not an organism but an artifact. It is incredibly well designed at a very high level of design criteria. For example, on this planet, one of the most advanced ethical systems we've been able to evolve is Buddhism, which teaches vegetarianism. If a Buddhist could design their own genome, they would become a fungus, because a fungus is a primary decomposer. It's the only karmaless place in the entire food chain. There is no karma for the fungi. They don't destroy any life whatsoever. So here you have this thing designed to traverse extraterrestrial space, occupying a karmaless niche in the ecosystem, and when complexed with a mammalian nervous system, a Galactarian archive of historical data becomes accessible. We have only known about DNA since 1950, less than 50 years, and we're already confidently talking about completely redesigning the human genome and so forth and so on. Well, if we pursue along these lines for 500 years, we will look the way we want to look. And, trivially, we may all want to be Keanu Reeves or something, but once the cultural agenda cuts in, if, say, Buddhism took over in the presence of an advanced molecular genetics, then we could design ourselves into a karmaless niche in the universe. I wish that we could bring, I don't know who it is, but the content of the mushroom experience, which was what launched your question, is so evidently alien and non-human and self-referential to a world we don't know that, to me, it would require a commission and several years of study to decide that this thing is not an extraterrestrial. Our notions of extraterrestrials to this point have been incredibly self-reflexive. Once you have fully in grasp the size of the universe and the amount of time that is available, then the idea that someone would come in a metal ship with an interest in your gross industrial output and a desire to cure cancer is absolutely preposterous. That's such a culture-bound notion. It's like expecting them to arrive with a load of pizzas ready for delivery. The trick is going to be to recognize the extraterrestrial. The very notion alien means unfamiliar. So it's not going to be like we think it is. The real task will be to recognize it. And we have discovered, after only 1,000 years, that toxic metal-based technologies are fatal. And we have pushed our entire planet into planetary crisis by coming to this realization rather late in the game. If long-term survival is the name of the game for intelligent life in the universe, then the way we're doing it is not the way to do it. It's going to have to be non-polluting, biologically based, molecularly based, so forth and so on. And as you run down the list, the mushroom begins to look more and more like the real thing. And then, of course, the content of the experience is so different from other psychedelics and so other-oriented that I am puzzled that we've been at this now nearly 30 years and we still don't have a consensus. I don't know what it is. Is it that when you take the mushroom, you lose all ability to then operate in the world of straight judgments and understanding? It's very puzzling, but I think probably the biota of the Earth is riddled with extraterrestrial genes, if not organisms, and possibly intelligences. But they're not interested in your fetal tissue or putting implants in you or taking you up and slicing you up in very large-scale surgical wards. I find all that paranoid and pathological. I can talk about that if you want, but it's not really our subject. Yeah.
In the Mondo 2000 interview, you talked about the DMT molecule as being extremely unusual. I'm a chemist, There's something about the number 4 position on the molecule. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. There are different ways to look for extraterrestrials. One way is to build a vast radio telescope and search for a signal. The way I would do it, if I were in charge of things, is I would search the terrestrial ecosystem for anomalous molecules that have no near relatives or history of evolutionary development in terrestrial organisms. Well, it turns out you don't have to look far. It's psilocybin. Psilocybin is 4-phosphoryloxy NN-dimethyltryptamine. It's the only 4-phosphorylated indole in nature. The only one. Okay, well, here you have a pentexyl group. It's a 5-sided thing. And then you have a benzene molecule off it. And these molecules have numbered positions, 1 through 6. And then you have a phosphorus group. It can attach at any one of those 6 positions. Attached in the 4 position, this is unheard of. It only occurs in this one case. Well, that's very odd. I mean, if we believe nature is a continuum of evolutionary adumbration, then to have suddenly, out of nowhere, a completely anomalous molecule sticking up suggests it may have come in from somewhere else. Yeah.
Psilocybin very similar in structure to serotonin?
It's similar. I mean, serotonin is 5-hydroxytryptamine. Serotonin is ubiquitous in life on this planet, from flatworms to man. It's in every organism there is.
Brain serotonin?
Well,
That's the one that I read is similar in structure to psilocybin. It's the feel-good chemical in your brain.
Yeah, the structure, yes. I mean, here's the thing. Serotonin is 5-hydroxytryptamine. Psilocybin is 4-phosphoryloxy NN-dimethyltryptamine. What you've got then is 4-NN-dimethyltryptamine as opposed to 5-hydroxytryptamine. Yeah, these things are a chemical family. Yeah.
My curiosity is getting raised about this alien UFO, people's experience with the psilocybin, having that sort of galactic experience. And since we're talking about consciousness and transformation, what role do you think that either the psilocybin bringing these images in, or this sort of cultural mythology around, close encounters, what role do you think that's playing? Why is that coming up in terms of the consciousness shift that we're trying to make? What's that about?
Well, if you're interested in UFOs, one of the first books ever written is, I think, one of the best. It's called Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky by Jung. And what he says is that, I hope I don't have to do too much backgrounding for an audience like this, but as you know, Jung analyzed alchemy and said that in the presence of a psyche epistemologically naive about the real nature of matter, the contents of the unconscious will be projected upon chemical processes. Well, our level of naivete about the cosmic environment is approximately at the same level of sophistication as the 16th century's grasp of matter was. And so Jung said that he talked about in alchemy what's called the rotundum, that which spins. And he said the spinning rotundum is a symbol of the psyche. The flying saucer, I believe, is a symbol of the eschatological object at the end of time. That we are being pulled into a confrontation with, call it the other, call it the ancestors, call it Jesus, call it Galactarian civilization. It's all and more than any of these things. And I believe, and I'm fairly alone in this, I think, that the pressure and the chaos that we're experiencing at the end of the 20th century is because we are drawing near to a bifurcation point there's not even words for it, in the dimensionality of our cosmos. I mean, we're very close to some kind of cusp, some kind of breakthrough point. History is, in fact, the enunciation that an animal is standing too close to the transcendental object and is, in fact, beginning to be transformed into a partial simulacrum of the transcendental object. That's what we are, half beast, half angel. You know, 1 foot in the slime, 1 foot in the Platonic superspaces. I suppose we have to talk at least briefly about the abduction thing. I think that this is much ado about nothing. It's very clear to me that every abduction case around, except for a vanishingly small number that we can put in the classical category of stigmata, can be explained by one simple fact. People are losing the ability to distinguish dreams from memories. That's all. That's all. If you lose the ability to distinguish dreams from memories, you'll have a very strange history to recite to people. And I think this is a cause by television. It's caused by a number of things. I grew up during the 50s when movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and so forth were coming out. And I distinctly remember a fever that I had when I was about 12, in which I had a horrifyingly real dream of gray-faced, cat-eyed aliens who were doing something to me that I didn't care for, and so forth and so on. Well, if I were to be placed into the hands of an obsessive hypnotherapist, I guarantee you in 2 weeks we'd come out with the realization that it wasn't a dream, that it actually happened. But and also the content. If you analyze the content of the abduction scenario, it's pure paranoia. And I can get off on this, but I don't really want to. The normal rules of evidence are not being applied. Let me go off on this just a little bit to say, how do you live your life in the light of a universe that is strange and vast? Well, you can just believe anything anybody tells you, in which case, fetal removal by extraterrestrials vies with your attention as you seek Elvis in the aisles of the local supermarket, as you worry about the fall of Atlantis, and so forth and so on. But over time, there has been something evolved called the rules of evidence, colloquially known as how to tell shit from shinola. And the first thing is there should be an economy of explanation. This is called Occam's razor. In other words, hypotheses should be no more complex than is necessary to explain whatever it is you're trying to explain. So if inability to tell dreams from memories explains abduction, why do we have to reach for the idea that geneticists from Zenebel-Ganubi are moving secretly among us with a surgical agenda and also carry out unscheduled proctological examinations in the middle of the night? I mean, really now. And what I want to say about that is I got where I am, whether it is enviable or not, but I got where I am by being tough, not by being gullible. And so I've rejected vast amounts of things, not only dubious things, but I've probably tossed a few babies out with the bathwater as well. But ask tough questions. Make it make sense. And be, as they say in Hawaii, be akamai, be smart. Understand the subtleties and the potential degradation of language. And then trust only yourself. Trust only yourself. Photographs are useless. Anecdotes are useless. What happened to your best friend last weekend when you weren't there is useless. You can entertain all that information, but what you have to, given the slipperiness of language, given the limitations of the human organism, you have to stay with primary experience and extrapolate out from there. And if you have had fetal tissue removed, then you have to deal with it. But the testimony of 700 people you don't know doesn't have to bother you at all. Yeah.